Okay, back at the bench for a minute. I've got this unit here, which was donated to toy makers, and I haven't got any use out of it. It's a bit of a mystery box. I think it was used in a guitar effects rack at some point. But considering that I'm not getting use out of it and I'm just storing it, I'm gonna pass it on to somebody else who can use it. But they wouldn't get any use out of it with the configuration as such, but to them it is useful as a box to store a passive mixer circuit inside of for the shielding, and it already has the 8 channels to select left and right. But to do that, I think we're going to have to remove all of the existing stuff out of here. Probably a simple job. I need to get this box cleared out so I can sand it and get it repainted and get the new stuff installed. So start here. These are just switches. Pull off these. They have the little grub screws in there. That one looks like it might be broken. One half of the flathead is just gone. It's not enough to stop me though. Yeah, this is kind of why I hold on to stuff like this. You never know when it's going to be useful. But I have more than enough to keep myself occupied for years, so when somebody else has a need for it, I'm happy to let it go. And it doesn't take that much work to turn it over into something else. Mostly need it for the metal shielding effects and convenient places to mount things. This box happens to be shallow enough that it's easy to manage. And the only thing that's going in there is a bunch of switches and resistors and audio jacks on the back. So this is about the right size. It is, however, road worn and been sitting in my attic for a while. Dusty, dirty. It's got tape on it. But we'll make it brand new again. It's even managed to pick up some rust at some point. Alright, so those all need to be finger loose. Normally you'd use a driver, like a socket or a crescent wrench, so that you don't chowder these up, but these are old and I don't think I'm going to reuse them, so not terribly worried about keeping them nice. When these 1/4" jacks get old, the spring of the contacts that pop over the tip of the plug get a bit worn out. And getting the spring back into them is generally not worth the effort. New ones are not expensive. So, what I would consider to be a wear part. Tried to find information on this company, and it looks like they made custom stuff basically for a little while. But it fell off the face of the earth at some point. It's kind of nice having this streaming set up. It removes all of the time-consuming parts of being able to put up videos, because obviously we do projects constantly. It's just these days we don't really have time to film something and then dump footage and then edit the footage and then upload the footage. That process takes about 4 times longer to do a project than just doing the project. But with this, there's no dumping camera cards and there's no editing time, and turns out that if you do like 400 podcast episodes and 750 videos, you actually get to the point where there's not much that you actually need to edit out anymore. So the editing at some juncture just became more of getting creative with shots and then editing those shots together or setting up those shots, stuff like that. None of the editing for us at this point has to do with like not having something to say or fumbling over words or anything like that. Part of that is just we've done it a million times, and part of that is after doing it a million times, we just don't care anymore about verbal flubs and that kind of stuff. Because honestly, video is not about that. It is all about what we're doing and what we're doing it to. In this case, it's a little bit fun because, and you can look up that, it's a Audio Plus Switch Bay SBY8, and it's really kind of a mystery box. Keep tearing along here. Just went and got the mail, and we have last week or something like that, I was exploring a little Peanut vintage new old stock transformer. That is an input stage transformer for a microphone preamp. And today the line out transformer showed up, which is also vintage new old stock, but this one is mil spec, and I was looking at the casing on it, and it has a altitude rating of 50,000 feet. Obviously it's a hermetically sealed box, so obviously being mil spec and having an altitude rating probably was for radios in planes originally. Now, I was looking up the data sheets for that particular unit, and the frequency response curve rolled off a little bit above the bottom of human hearing and a little bit below the top of human hearing. So normally I wouldn't want to use that in a preamplifier, but the guy who has this pile of new old stock units actually had someone use their spectrum analyzer and sweep to figure out what its real frequency response was. So there's a difference between the spec and what the units actually do, of course. Much as you would want to test them if you were pairing them up for use stereo, or or if you were testing them before installing them in equipment to verify that the spec was indeed met by the individual unit. He went to the trouble of doing that, and the frequency response is good and flat all the way down, well below human hearing, and all the way up to 50 kilohertz, if you believe that. That is awesome. I am happy to use a transformer that can do that. Oh, given I'm talking about it, I can pull it out real quick here. Packaging is kind of nice. They put a used electrical tape spool in there to keep the pins from getting knocked. So there's that. It has exterior hermetically sealed conductive shielding case. It has the static shield in there as well, and it is a 1-to-1, the way that I'll wire it up anyway. And I'll be using it for line level to line level. It's a little bit old on the ink down there, but you can see max altitude 50,000 feet. It's rated for 300 to 10,000, but it's actually very flat from 30 all the way to 50,000 according to that guy's sampling of this batch. So I may have to set up a test rig and find out what it does, but if it's that spec and I hook it up, it'll be fairly obvious because it'll sound a bit honky. So we'll see. But I'll be using the 600 ohm to 600 ohm 1-to-1 ratio across the top of this guy. But enough of that for now. We'll be getting back to that project when the power supply parts start to show up. But I haven't ordered any of that yet, so got that guy and the little transformer that goes with it. It's right there. Let's get the cover off this guy. Let's see what we need to take out of here. Still have to get the nuts off the front. Do want to make sure we save these screws, though I probably have something compatible in my junk pile. They are rusty, but they definitely look like they could be cleaned up easily enough. This one's actually going to end up in a lady's studio, and I think the plan is to girly up the case so it might actually get a pink paint job. Nothing too fancy going on there. And as you can see, it's basically just a bunch of mono jacks by the looks of it, with a ground bus bar connecting all the ground shields together. And then all the tips are coming into these switches. And the switches are outputs in or out, it says. And it looks like these jacks are hooked up to the in selection on these switches, and these are obviously double pull. So it looks like if this were set to in, then inputs 1 would end up being electrically connected to these two, and if it were set to out, then 1 would be connected to these two. So that's not terribly useful for me in my studio. I can't really think of anything that I would need that for. I don't have a lot of outboard gear to switch between, and I have enough I/O on my interface that it can kind of all just live connected all the time and assigned to inputs and outputs on the interface. So I think this box is solving a problem that I don't have. Gotta be quick about this, it's almost dinner time. Yeah, these jacks are definitely rusty. I don't think they're going in the junk bin. I think they're going in the metal recycling bin. Okay. I generally build most of my own patch bay stuff from scratch. So this construction technique of just using a bare wire to ground bus all of these shields together basically looks like something I would do. I do kind of like the thought that just some old tech back in the day was able to start a little company assembling this stuff in their garage or little miniature warehouse space. That one's seizing. What's going on here? So I only need 10 jacks on the back. I will likely have to fabricate a cover for this back so that I can only have the number of holes required. Now these I will keep. That's actually useful. Oh, there's blue. Wonder what has him all riled up. He's downstairs hanging out with Daddy. In theory. Seems like yesterday he was just a tiny little puppy who didn't do things like bark at windows. Cool, that's all sorted. Inside of the case has a little bit of free range rust, but nothing really in the metal. Yeah, that should be a really nice chassis for something. Some of the damage on here is going to have to be dealt with rust-wise. Going to have to fabricate a new cover for the back so that I can drill just the inputs and outputs that are required for this particular project. The paint that's on there needs to go. It's got enough damage on it that I think I'll just go right down to the metal. Some scratches and whatnot. Let's see that one there. You can see that somebody stepped on it at some point. It's not visible to my eyes, but the camera's definitely picking that up. It's like there's a footstool for somebody at some point. Inside doesn't have any rust damage or anything like that. Outside has a little bit. Mostly in this area. Nothing too bad. I'll be able to clean that all up when I strip the paint off of it. But while I'm here, let's do the tape removal. I don't want to gum up my sanding equipment. Tape residue. Trusty old razor blade. May just take the wire wheel to this, considering I'm not. Cut brush, maybe? A little bit of paper over here. Yeah, I think this will be quick work on the cut brush. Strip this paint back so that it's nice and flat. There's like a chip there, so I would have to remove the paint because the ledge down from where the chip is would be kind of hard to get to look right again. Yeah, that surface rust is just barely there, so that's going to clean up. The steel chassis, by the way. If I were going to do this new, I might go with aluminum. Oh yeah, that rust is just gone. So I think the next step of this will probably have to happen in the shop with the angle grinder. I will very likely be able to reuse those 8 places. I've got 2-way switches that allow me to pick left and right. The functionality of this box really isn't going to change all that much. Main difference being that they just had it switchable and they didn't build in any of the resistor network for summing things together, which is what I need to do. I already have that unit built, though. It's moving from the case that it lived in my studio, in which I used that mixer for years, and moving into this case, but I did not do a pretty fancy job on mine. It is just in an ugly, old, ratty, rusty box. But this is going to live in somebody else's studio, so we can spend the time to do it a little bit nicer. Okay, so that is the update for the moment. I can smell that the food's just about ready, so I'm going to go eat some dinner. And next time I'm at the bench or doing whatever, I'll turn this back on and try to keep you guys up to date. Oh, there's the stop button. Check this out. So that's a mouse. That's the streaming computer. That's the live monitor, confidence monitor. The chat shows up right there. And this is not hooked to an actual computer. It's not even hooked to Ethernet, it's just Wi-Fi. And all I have to do is click start. And we're live. And when I'm done, all I have to do is click stop. But turns out ESD mats and optical mice don't like each other. It's so jaggy. Alright, see you guys later. Go eat dinner.